Hello, welcome to the Wire Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things sports. I'm Ryan McCrary, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics. I want to start off by discussing Shedeur Sanders' performance this year and what the Cleveland Browns should do moving forward with their quarterback situation. Should they stick with Shedeur Sanders after the season, or should they look to make an upgrade at the quarterback position during the offseason? I also want to talk about the Houston Texans, a team that I think is being very underrated at the moment. I also want to talk a little bit of college basketball. I want to talk about the Michigan Wolverines, who are having a very dominant season this year. I want to talk about how well they've been playing and why I think they're one of the best teams we've seen in recent memory and maybe of all time. And then lastly, I want to talk about the Atlanta Hawks, my favorite team, who's having a really rough season, and they've had a really rough last couple of years. I want to talk about some of the trade rumors we've heard surrounding Trae Young and what I think the team needs to do moving forward. We're going to have a jam-packed episode today. We're talking about a lot, and there's a lot been happening in the sports world recently. I hope you're excited for this episode. I know I am, and let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, let's go ahead and get things started by talking about Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. I think the Shedeur Sanders discussion is super interesting. The Browns have had a really rough season this year. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they are going to have a top 10 pick this year. I actually don't know where they're slated right now in the draft order. I know they dropped down a little bit after beating the Steelers this past weekend. But despite struggling a lot for most of the season, the Browns have been talked about a lot in the media, largely because of their rookie quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. And people have been talking about his performance a lot. He's been under a microscope this season, and people are breaking down his performance every single week, discussing what he's doing well, what he's not doing so well. And I think the Shedeur Sanders situation is really interesting because it's a really interesting kind of exercise in team building and prospect development, because Shedeur Sanders, first off, hasn't played very much. So he's got a small sample of snaps. He's a fifth-round pick who was thrown into the fire mid-season. And that adds a layer of difficulty when you're evaluating his play. And you also have to take into consideration his supporting cast, because the Browns have a really bad offensive infrastructure for Shedeur Sanders. So that also adds on to the difficulty of evaluating him. And so I think that alone makes discussing Shedeur Sanders really interesting, because you're trying to be accurate in your prediction of who he's going to be in the future, and you're trying to properly evaluate his game while also taking into consideration all of these different factors. And then for the Browns, this matters a lot for their future. What are they going to do at the quarterback position moving forward? Are they going to be able to get a quarterback in the draft? Right now it seems unlikely. But do they stick with Shedeur after the season? Do they play Deshaun Watson next year? It is really interesting. A really interesting position for the Browns franchise to be in. But I want to give my thoughts on Shedeur Sanders' performance this year. Because I know Shedeur Sanders has a ton of fans, and his fans are very vocal in their support of him. And there's a lot of critics out there who are very loud. And to be honest, I have been one of those loud critics. But I want to be fair to Shedeur Sanders. So let's start out with the positives about his play this season, because I do think there have been flashes of high-level play from Shedeur. I actually released a video recently breaking down Shedeur's game and his performance this season. And there are certainly flashes of high-level play from him. I can think of a play versus the Raiders where he had a beautiful deep ball on, I think it was a third down. The Raiders were running If I remember correctly, cover zero, they were blitzing a lot of defenders. Shedeur escapes the pocket, scrambles, hits Isaiah Bond for a deep ball that gets the Browns inside the 5-yard line. It was an incredible play. And it's things like that that make you say, wow, like this kid is really talented. Like, there is some talent here. And then he had a throw against the Steelers that I thought was impressive, where I believe there was a crossing route. He had a defender who was in pursuit of him, and the throw wasn't contested, but he did have to layer the throw a little bit, and it was just a very solid throw. And I don't think the degree of difficulty was as high on that play as a lot of people are making it seem, but I thought that was a really impressive throw. There was another play he had against the Steelers where he escaped from the pocket, made a nice throw to a guy who I think was on like a little drag route or like a short crossing route. But there are certainly plays where Shedeur Sanders showcases his mobility, his ability to get outside the pocket and make plays. And I think that's really impressive. Another play I can think of where Shedeur showed his mobility is on a third down against the Bills, in which everything was covered. He had no receiver open. He escapes a sack, picks up a first down on a scramble. And it's plays like that that show that there's something there with Shedeur. And so I want to give him credit for that. I also want to give him credit for being really good at avoiding sacks this year. His pressure to sack rate is below 20%. It's pretty solid. So that's really impressive. He's also been quite mobile this year. The last I checked, now this is before this last game against Steelers, Shedeur is averaging just over 20 rushing yards per game and over 8 yards per carry. Very good numbers. And so his mobility has legitimately been very good this year. And that's been really impressive to see from Shedeur. He's been able to make plays outside the pocket at times. And so he deserves props for all of that. Here's the issue. We cannot just look at his best plays and think that that is who he is. And we can't throw out all of the bad production just because his supporting cast is bad. We can take that context into consideration, and we should. We have to. It's irresponsible to not do that. But still, there are so many flaws with Shedeur's game right now. I think accuracy has been a huge issue this year. A lot of people like to throw out that Ravens game, and I get that he didn't start that game. He was thrown into the fire there, and I get why people don't want to take that game into consideration. But his overall body of work this year showcases or reveals a huge concern when it comes to his accuracy, Shedeur's accuracy, and his decision-making. He's turning the ball over a ton. And there are times where he has an interception that's not his fault, or that's not entirely his fault, but he also has some turnover-worthy plays that aren't turning into turnovers. And that's why his turnover-worthy play rate this year is really, really high. And I know that his supporting cast is affecting his production a bit. I certainly will admit that. But even when you look at his production on plays when the pocket's clean, his production is really bad. So it's not just the supporting cast that is affecting his production. Even when things are going right, even when the protection's holding up, his numbers are still bad. And so, I'm of the opinion that Shedeur has largely played poorly this year. He's been super inconsistent. There have been high highs, but I think the lows have outweighed the highs, and I think it's more than fair to say that Shedeur has played pretty poorly this year. That's my opinion. I know a lot of Shedeur's biggest supporters will disagree with that. And I just want to say, Shedeur's supporters are really annoying. Like, it's crazy how often I've gone on Twitter and seen his fans hyping Shedeur up as if he's the best performing rookie quarterback this year, which is absolutely not true. And a lot of his fans will make it seem like he's playing at a high level, and he is clearly the best option for the Browns moving forward. And I feel like I'm going crazy because, for example, there were a few plays in last week's game against the Steelers in which Shedeur made blatantly awful decisions or blatantly bad throws, and his fans are defending him. Take, for example, the touchdown he threw to Harold Fanning Jr. That ball was bad. It was a bad ball that could have easily been intercepted if the Steelers' secondary played it better. It was a terrible throw, but it was a touchdown because Shedeur got lucky, because Harold Fanning Jr. Tracked the ball really well. Yet I have seen numerous people defending the throw, saying, well, it was a touchdown. It was a completion. So it's fine. No, the process was terrible. Like, it was a horribly executed throw that Shedeur was lucky that it was a completion and a touchdown. And then he had an awful interception on a throw where he tried to make a play. He threw it up to Jerry Jeudy. It was a horrible decision and a horrible throw. And I've seen people say, you know what? He's so used to throwing balls up to Travis Hunter and Travis Hunter coming down with them. That's why he made the throw, and Jerry Jeudy should have, made a better effort to make the catch. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, there's been so much cope with Shedeur's fans who are absolutely delusional. Like, they're absolutely insane. It's wild to me. It reminds me of when Falcons fans were hyping up Desmond Ridder before he was, became the full-time starter for a full season. I'm a Falcons fan myself. I remember that period. And people were hyping him up so much. And I was super critical of Desmond Ridder before he was the full-time starter for a full season. I was saying, guys, like, y'all are being insane. He's not actually that good, and y'all are going to be really disappointing when he actually gets to play for a full year. And I even had, like, a small Falcons writer DMing me, saying that I didn't know what I was talking about, saying that the team really liked him, that they think that Ridder could become a more mobile Matt Ryan. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I think that's crazy. And I was proven correct. And Desmond Ridder had a horrible season in which he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And I feel like we're seeing this play out again with Shedeur Sanders, where the production is absolutely awful. He does have some good moments, but the lows are incredibly low. Yet his fans are defending him time and time again. Like, they're not being objective whatsoever. And it's absolutely insane to see. Like, I've seen people say, he outplayed Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Well, yeah, but Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers were not good in those games. I mean, Rodgers sucked this past week. No crap, Shedeur played better. I mean, the bar was so low. I mean, the bar was in hell for Shedeur to play better than Aaron Rodgers. I mean, yeah. No, yeah. I mean, of course he played better. Yeah, like, props to Shedeur. But that's like playing better than, like, a blind person at quarterback. Yeah, it's going to happen. The performance of the opposing quarterback was so bad. It would have been a disaster if Shedeur didn't play better than Aaron Rodgers. Come on now. And I've seen Shedeur fans literally acting like Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks in the world. He's not. He absolutely isn't. And it's ridiculous to kind of to act like he is just so that you can prop up Shedeur. And we're seeing Shedeur fans do stuff like that all the time. They are just delusional. They're coping. And it's insane to see. Now, what should the Browns do moving forward? In my opinion, I don't really know. Before they beat the Steelers, I was saying, they should obviously draft a quarterback. But now, I don't know if they're going to be in a position to do that. We'll see. Should they trade up for a quarterback in this draft? I don't know, man. Like, I'm not really sure if Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore are good enough to trade up for. Maybe they are. I haven't really done any kind of research for the draft yet, but for now, I just don't really view them as that kind of prospect. So I don't really know what the Browns should do. If one of those guys falls to them, which is unlikely, but if that does happen, they should pick them. They just have to. Both of those guys are better bets to be quality starters in the NFL than Shedeur Sanders right now. Shedeur is a 5th-round pick with horrible production, and because of that, the Browns cannot commit to Shedeur Sanders no matter what. That would be an insane decision for them to make. Now, maybe Shedeur ends up being their starter next season. That could definitely happen with the Browns kind of falling in the draft order a bit. But honestly, I think the team's probably going to go back to Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback. If you listen to the way that Kevin Stefanski talks about Shedeur Sanders, it doesn't really seem like he is a big fan of Shedeur. He just, when reporters ask him about what Shedeur's doing well, he'll say, well, he got a big win. That's cool, but he doesn't really talk about anything specifically that he's doing well, which to me makes it seem like he's not that impressed with his performance, that he's not liking what he's seeing on film. Otherwise, he would say, oh, well, his accuracy's been really good. I love the big-time throws he's making. So because of that, it seems like the team doesn't really love Shedeur. But of course, that could not be true. That's just an outsider's perspective on what the coach is saying. But I think the Browns are in a really tough position. I don't know what you do now. I don't really know if they have the cap space to sign a quarterback in the offseason. Obviously, the best case scenario is they get a quarterback in the draft, but I'm not really sure that's going to be a possibility now. Maybe they do stick with Shedeur Sanders for next season just because they have no other choice. That may be what ends up happening. But honestly, I think it's probably more likely that the team just starts Deshaun Watson next season, which will be a brutal outcome. But the Browns, they're in a rough spot, and there's nothing much they can do. It would be cool to see what Shedeur Sanders can do with a better supporting cast. The Browns have a ton of picks in this upcoming draft, so if they can give Shedeur a better supporting cast, we can really give a very strong opinion on his play next season. But he hasn't really earned that. So if the Browns don't give him a chance to play next season, Shedeur can't complain. He simply can't. He was a 5th-round pick who has awful production this year. So he would really have no room to complain if that happens, but we'll see. I think the Shedeur Sanders conversation is really interesting. And the way that people talk about him, both his fans and his critics, is fascinating. And I don't know where the Browns go from here. They're in a really tough spot, but we'll see. Hopefully they're able to get themselves out of this hole, because it feels like they're in a pit right now. All right, next up, let's talk about the Houston Texans, a team I think is being really slept on right now. Whenever I hear people talk about like contenders in the NFL, I feel like the Texans aren't mentioned a lot. Maybe that's just me, but this is a team I think is being slept on, despite the fact that they actually are really good, and it feels like the season they're having is going under the radar. So I wanted to highlight the Texans in this episode and talk about why I've been really impressed with them this year, why I think they actually are a sleeper to make a deep playoff run, but also I want to talk about some concerns I have about the team, and a few reasons why I think they may not make a deep playoff run despite having a pretty strong analytical profile. So the reason why I've been really impressed with the Texans this year is because they lead the AFC in simple rating system, which is a stat from Pro Football Reference that is essentially margin of victory adjusted for strength of schedule. So think of the stat as adjusted margin of victory. by this metric, they are the best team in the AFC. And the reason why they have been so good this year is because of their defense. The Texans have a absurdly dominant defense. They lead the league in EPA per play allowed, and they are very productive on this side of the ball. They wreak havoc. They're top 10 in passes defended, interceptions, sacks, and tackles for loss. So they wreak havoc on in the secondary and in the backfield. They have the best pass defense in the NFL by adjusted net yards per pass attempt. If you're not familiar with this stat, what this stat is something very similar to passer rating, but it incorporates sack. So it's basically an efficiency metric that incorporates completion percentage, yards per pass attempt, touchdown rate, and interception rate. It's a very solid efficiency metric, in my opinion. The only issue is that it doesn't incorporate rushing production, but for like quarterbacks, but it still is a very good passing efficiency metric. And by this stat, the Texans look like the best pass defense in the NFL. That's very impressive. The Texans also are really good at stopping the run. They don't allow many rushing yards per game. They're also pretty efficient by yards allowed per carry. They rank top 10 in both of these metrics. And so overall, this defense is amazing. And it's why they've been so successful this year. And I think most people are aware that the defense is really good. But in my opinion, they have a very strong case for having the best defense in the NFL. And so that is the main reason why I'm so high on the Texans and why I think they need to be talked about a lot more. This defense is scary. Now, I do want to talk about a few reasons why I'm a little bit worried about the Texans. And although I think they should be talked about more, there are a few reasons why I think this team could have a disappointing performance in the playoffs. And it has to do with their offense. I think their offense is really concerning. And I'm not sure that it's going to be able to hold up in the playoffs. For example, the Texans rank just 24th in EPA per play on offense. That's well below league average. And they don't really do many things well on offense. Their run game is below average across the board. Their production in the run game is just not very good at all. And their passing attack has been really underwhelming. To be honest, I don't really trust C.J. Stroud. I've been a C.J. Stroud doubter for a few years now. I actually made a video after his rookie season kind of critiquing him. And the reason why I made that video is because after his rookie year, he was being hyped up a lot. People were saying he might be a top 5 quarterback already. People were saying, oh, this guy's definitely a top 10 quarterback. The sky's the limit. And at the time, I was saying, I think there are actually some serious issues with this game. Like, I think his accuracy is overrated. I thought his rookie year overall was very good. He was very good for a rookie, but I thought the hype was a bit too much. I didn't think he was quite a top 10 quarterback that year. And I thought there were some serious issues in his game that could cause him to have underwhelming performances in the future. And I feel like since his rookie year, Stroud has been kind of stagnant, and his performance hasn't been that great. Like, I think the accuracy has been underwhelming for his entire career, and that should be his biggest strength. I feel like that was one of his biggest strengths in college, but in the NFL, he just hasn't been an accurate passer, in my opinion. I think the data has made that abundantly clear. You can disagree if you want, but that's been a major issue. This year, his big-time throw rate has fallen off. He's not making as many big-time throws as he has in previous seasons. He's not handling pressure all that well. His deep ball passing hasn't been very good this year. So overall, I just think he's been pretty disappointing this year. And if he's not going to be consistent and the Texans can't run the ball all that well, then are they going to be able to score points consistently in the playoffs? I don't know. And that's the main reason why I like the Texans, but I can't, fall in love with them and really make a strong stance in saying that they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs. I think they can, but I can't be confident that they will, largely because their run game is weak and I don't trust CJ Stroud. And so I think all of this makes the Texans a really interesting team. They probably have the best defense in the league, but their offense, is lags behind. And I think it drags down the entire team. And so I think they're a team to watch in the playoffs. It'll be really interesting to see how they perform in the postseason. And I'm excited to see what the offense looks like in the playoffs, because that's going to be kind of the swing factor for the Texans. If they can perform well on offense in the postseason, they can make a deep run. But I can also see them getting knocked out of the playoffs early because their offense isn't consistent enough and they aren't able to really run the ball or pass the ball well enough. But yeah, like I said, I'm fascinated to see what the Texans look like in the playoffs because I think the defense is more than good enough for them to make a deep playoff run. I'm just interested to see if the offense can carry their weight and help the team make a deep run in the playoffs this year. Next up, I want to talk some college hoops, and specifically I want to talk about the Michigan Wolverines and the dominant season they're having because they're the best team in the league, and their performance this year has been shockingly, absurdly dominant. They've been incredible this year, and I want to talk about them. I haven't really talked much college hoops on the podcast this year, but I am a college basketball fan, and seeing what Michigan has done this year has made it impossible to not talk about them. So I want to highlight the Wolverines and how well they've been playing because, honestly, I think they've been playing so well that they're one of the best teams we've seen in recent memory, and they might be one of the best teams in college basketball history. That's how well they're playing, in my opinion. So right now, Michigan, they are number one in the KenPom rankings, and they are number one by an incredible margin. They're the best team in the country, and it's not close right now. They have an absurd margin of victory of 30.3 points per game, and they're doing this despite having the 6th ranked strength of schedule. That's insane. I mean, you can look at their game logs and see that they have put together some dominant performances against really good teams. For example, they played a non-conference game against Gonzaga earlier this year in a tournament, and they destroyed the Bulldogs by 40 points, which is insane because Gonzaga is a top 3 team in the KenPom rankings. Beating a team like that by 40 should not be possible, but Michigan is that good. And I can't remember what tournament that was, but they were destroying every team they played. Like, they beat the crap out of San Diego State. They beat the crap out of my Auburn Tigers. And Auburn lost by 30 against Michigan in that tournament. And it was somehow the least, embarrassing loss any team had against Michigan in that tournament, which is insane to think about. But yeah, Michigan, the performance they put together this year has been incredible. They're really good on both sides of the ball. According to KenPom, they have a top 5 offense and the best defense in the country. And on defense, they are amazing at protecting the rim and limiting fouls, which is a really scary combo to have. They don't allow teams to shoot very well at the rim. They're really good at limiting teams from shooting well inside the 3-point line. And on offense, they're incredible at scoring. They're scoring inside the arc. Their interior scoring on offense is fantastic. And they're also very good at shooting threes. And they don't allow opponents to shoot well from 3. And all of this has allowed them to be the best team in the nation. And I wanted to highlight a few of their players who are playing really well individually. For example, Yaxel Lindenborg is having an absurd season, a historically dominant year. He's been elite as a scorer across the board. He's shooting over 75% on twos, and he's shooting 40% from three, which is insane. But he's also been really solid as a passer, and he's been incredibly productive as a defender. And right now, he has a box plus minus of 21.3, which is insane. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think that might be the best single season BPM in the history of college basketball, which is insane. Ade Mara has also been a huge part of Michigan's success. He has an absurd combination of shot blocking, rim finishing, rebounding, and passing. He's amazing in all these areas. And he's been a huge part of the team's success on defense. And the team is so well-rounded. No one dominates the ball. They have a lot of players with, moderate usage rates. They're really good at moving the ball around. They have one of the best assist rates of any team in the league. And they have 5 players with a box plus minus of 10 or above, which is insane. That's a very high mark. And they've got 5 players doing that. And they have 8 players overall with a BPM of 8 or better, which is incredible. This team is so good on both sides of the ball. They're really good operating on the interior. Their big men are fantastic. They have arguably the best player in the country in Yaxel Lindenborg. They have one of the best bigs in the nation in Mara. This team is absurd. They're so well-rounded. They don't rely on anyone too much. They don't really have a ball-dominant, heliocentric player, yet they move the ball really well. They're great at passing. They're so good at protecting the rim. They shoot the ball well. This team is so impressive. Right now, they are the favorite to win the national championship. They're the best team in the nation, and it's not really close. They're just so good on both sides of the ball. If any other team were to win the national championship this year, it would be shocking. And that's how good Michigan is playing right now. It's been really impressive watching this team play this year. They've been so good this year. Their head coach, Dusty May, he has this team playing at an absurdly high level. And because of all of this, I think this is the best team I've witnessed in college basketball. Maybe I need to do more research before I make a claim like that, but the numbers make it clear this is one of the better teams we've seen in recent memory. They're playing at such an absurd level. It's been very impressive. I just wanted to talk about Michigan on today's podcast because it's just shocking what they've done this year. They're beating teams by like 30 points a game, and they're playing a really hard schedule, yet they're still dominating teams game in, game out. I mean, for example, they beat Maryland recently by 18 points, and it was a disappointing performance. That's how good Michigan's been. They played Villanova recently, and Villanova is a winning team, and they just wiped them off the floor. Michigan is just playing at a level that no other team can match right now. And I wanted to discuss that on today's episode. If you haven't watched this team yet this year, you have to. They're must-watch TV. They're absurdly dominant. And this is one of the better teams we've ever seen in college basketball. To close out today's episode, I wanted to talk about the Atlanta Hawks. I'm a Hawks fan myself, and the Hawks are in a really rough spot right now. They're having a rough season, and recently there have been a lot of trade rumors surrounding Trae Young. And so I wanted to talk about all of this. I wanted to talk about how the Hawks are playing this season, what they need to do moving forward, and I really wanted to dive deep into, what a Trae Young trade would look like, and if the team should move on from their young star. Let's go ahead and talk about what the team has done this year. Right now, the Hawks are 15-19. They currently are 10th in the Eastern Conference standings, and that is really disappointing. The fact that they are not really in the hunt to host a playoff series is really disappointing. This has been a bad year for the Hawks, and this has been a consistent problem for the team. They have had 3 straight years of being sub 500, and they haven't won their division since 2020. And Trae Young has been hurt for most of the season, so he hasn't really played a ton this year. But when he has played, the results on the floor have been really, really bad. And that's been really difficult to witness. When he's on the floor, the offense has played really well, but the defense is so bad. Like, when he's on the floor, I looked this up earlier today. When he's on the floor, the defense is giving up almost 130 points per 100 possessions. And that is absurdly bad. That's like almost 13 points worse than the league average defensive rating, which is really bad. But he's not the only issue. I mean, Zaccharie Risacher has been awful for a number 1 pick. He doesn't really do anything well. He's not shooting well. He doesn't pass the ball. He doesn't provide any kind of playmaking. His effort and activity on defense is underwhelming. He don't really rebound the ball. Like, there's not really anything that Risacher does well. I don't really know why he's playing. I know he was a number 1 pick, which was a crazy decision at the time, but it's worked out even worse than I could have possibly imagined. I mean, I thought he would at least be a good 3-point shooter, but he's not even doing that. And so if he's not doing that, he's not an efficient scorer, and he doesn't really provide much playmaking or rebounding or really anything on defense. Why is he playing? Now, there have been reports that the team is looking to potentially trade him, but like, what kind of value are they going to get? I know that Risacher is young, and he's got the draft pick bias because he was the number 1 overall pick, but he's not good. Like, I don't know what else to say about Risacher. He hasn't been good for 2 years now, and the results this year haven't been good. He hasn't been better than he was last year when he was a rookie, and so that's been a huge problem. The performance of Risacher has been really underwhelming. Dyson Daniels has been a lot worse than he was last year. Now, to be fair to him, last year he had an absurd season where he was extremely good on defense. This year he's been a lot worse. I think Onyeka Okongwu's defensive impact has been really disappointing. Kristaps Porzingis has been he hasn't really played much due to an illness, and in his presence, Onyeka just hasn't been as good defensively as you need him to be. Now, not everything has been bad for the Hawks. Jalen Johnson is having an absurd season. He's probably going to be an all-star this year. He's taken a huge step forward as a playmaker. He's scoring really efficiently. The shooting's been really impressive from him. His defense has been questionable, but the offensive development has been insane. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has also been pretty solid this year. I've been really impressed with Mohamed Gay whenever he's been on the floor. His impact metrics have been pretty impressive. Whenever he's on the floor, the team performs a lot better, which is cool to see. But yeah, overall, it's been a really disappointing year for the Hawks. And now, this week, there was a report from Tim McMahon that the Hawks are definitely going to be trading Trae Young by the trade deadline. Apparently, the team has not even made an effort to sign him to an extension, and that stinks. You know, I have been a Trae Young defender over the last couple of years, and despite that, I have wanted the team to trade him for about a year and a half. I think the writing's been on the wall that the team just has a very limited ceiling with Trae Young as our best player. And I think that has been obvious for probably 2 years now. And because of that, I have thought that the team needed to trade Trae sooner rather than later. But unfortunately, the team has waited just too long. And so now we're probably not going to get a lot of value for him, which is unfortunate. Maybe we can trade Trae in a package for a star, like an Anthony Davis, or crazy. Like, I don't think this is going to happen, but maybe even for a Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe that's a possibility. But it sounds like the most likely trade we're going to make is moving Trae Young in a package for Anthony Davis, which that would be interesting. Pairing him with Jalen Johnson could be interesting. I'm a little bit worried about Anthony Davis's injury history, but at his best, Davis is a very good player, and he would improve the team a lot when he's healthy. But man, it's so sad to be a Hawks fan right now. The team sucks. The team's mid, and Trae Young just isn't the same player he used to be, in my opinion. Yeah, it's been hard to watch the team this year. The fact that they're like probably going to be in the play-in sucks. I mean, how? The East is wide open this year. I mean, heck, the Pistons are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and the Hawks can't get out of the play-in. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Now, I do want to give the front office a little bit of grace here. This is the first season for our GM. He already made a great franchise-changing trade during the draft when we got the Pelicans pick this year, which is huge. And it's not just the Pelicans pick. It's the better pick of either their pick or the Bucks pick, which the Pelicans owned. And that's an immensely valuable trade asset. And some of the issues that the team has stem from our previous front office. Landry Fields was our last GM, and he wasn't that great of a GM, which is why he got fired. And now the Hawks are in a tough position, but they've got to trade Trae Young. They have no other choice, in my opinion. They've got to cut bait right now. They can't sign him to an extension. They've got to move him for something, whether it be Anthony Davis or whatever kind of package they can get for him. I don't think he's a very valuable asset, honestly. I love Trae. Like, he's a very good playmaker, but he's not a very good scorer, in my opinion. He's just a very inefficient scorer. He can't finish at the rim. His three-point shot diet is so difficult that he's not even really that good of a three-point shooter. He can shoot a lot of threes, but he takes so many difficult threes, and it's why this year he's been inefficient as a scorer. The playmaking is always going to be elite. I mean, he's always going to be one of the best passers in the league, but in his offensive impact this year has been very strong. Whenever he's on the floor, the offense performs a lot better, but his defense is so bad. He's got to dominate the ball, which is a huge issue. So I do think the team needs to trade Trae Young. It's time. I'm just worried that we're not going to be able to get much for him. And if we don't trade him for Anthony Davis, what are we going to get for him? I don't know, man. The Hawks are in a really rough spot. I don't really see the brights, I don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. I love Jalen Johnson, but outside of him, like, what's to like about this roster? I don't know. I mean, people have been hyping up this team for years now, but man, like, I don't really see what the reason is to be positive about this team. Hopefully, the Hawks end up getting a top 3 pick, and they're able to draft Cameron Boozer or Darren Peterson or AJ DeMansa. But if we don't get one of those guys, I don't really see a reason to be that excited about this team. It's just the Hawks are in a really rough spot. They've been bad this year. They've been mediocre for the last couple of years. And it feels like there aren't many options for us to improve the team. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. I know we can get Anthony Davis, but it feels like Anthony Davis is at a weird spot in his career. He's aging. His injury history is really concerning. And so I'm not that excited about an Anthony Davis trade. Maybe I should be. Maybe I'm an idiot for not being that excited. I'm just worried about his age and injuries. And outside of Jalen Johnson, there weren't many players on this team that I'm excited about, if I'm being honest. But those are my thoughts on the Atlanta Hawks. And those are, those are my thoughts on this team. As a Hawks fan, I'm underwhelmed by the team. But that's what I've got to say about the team right now. And that's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That would help me out a lot. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, I would greatly appreciate a review. That would help me out as well. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I did, and I will see y'all next time. God bless.